Delegations from the non-aligned movement meet in the Venezuelan capital for a second day. We take a deeper look at the Sandinista Revolution 40 years after one of the most important victories in Latin American history. And Guyana's president insists he's acting in good faith to comply with the Caribbean Court of Justice ruling, meaning elections must be held within 3 months. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South. I am Doris Polo. Delegations from 120 countries have met for a second day in the Venezuelan capital for the ministerial meeting of the Coordination Bureau of the Movement of Non-Aligned Countries. Guests including the Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov have also been invited to the event. The non-aligned movement's meeting aims to consolidate cooperation and exchange in order to defend sovereignty and self-determination. The president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, addressed the assembly last night, highlighting the importance of the history of the non-aligned movement and praising the role the organization has played in creating a new multi-centric world.
We can't forget the processes that led us here. And if we lose sight of history, it's difficult, almost impossible, to visualize the tasks ahead of us in the future. That's why it's so important that our non-aligned movement remains conscious of history and the historic forces that we carry within us. The immense role that the non-aligned movement has played, the immense role that the non-aligned movement has been called to play in order to open the way for humanity to create a new, multi-centric world. As our brother Xi Jinping, the president of China, says, humanity is a community with a common destiny. We're in agreement on this. It may seem that humanity in peace without hegemony seems like a dream impossible to achieve. Some would say it's impossible to achieve a world without empires. We would remind them to look to the past and where we come from. There were those who said we would never have free, independent, and sovereign states. And look at where we are now.
And the Friendly Countries in Defense of the United Nations Charter Group has declared that only Venezuela can decide its future, adding that any intervention in Caracas's affairs is in violation of the UN Charter. The meeting has taken place on the sidelines of the non-aligned movement event. The group also called for an immediate end to the U.S. sanctions against the Bolivarian Republic. The Cuban Foreign Minister, Bruno Rodriguez, said that it is impossible to promote international security without supporting the government of Venezuela.
The mobilization of international consciousness, of public opinion, of social media, and of those people of goodwill has to impede the use of force and violence against the Venezuelan people and government. There was an emphasis that it wouldn't be possible, with current global conditions, to promote peace and international security in any hemisphere or region without defending, whatever the cost, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela's right to peace.
In other news, the Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif has said that sanctions meet the criteria of terrorism by using violence and intimidation against civilians in pursuit of political aims at a non-aligned meeting on the use of sanctions.
This is terrorism, pure and simple, no question about it. You just Google terrorism, just Google it right now. And this is the definition that the dictionary will give you. The unlawful use of violence or intimidation, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political aims. That is the Google definition of terrorism. So please, friends, stop using sanctions. Sanctions are a means of imposing a lawful order. Sanctions have a legal connotation. This is economic terrorism. I suggest that all of us deprive the unlawful, basically lawless US government from using a terminology that has lawful connotations. This is economic terrorism, pure and simple. We need to repeat it again and again. And we do not negotiate with terrorists.
Still with Iran, Tehran has said that the British oil tanker it seized had hit a fishing vessel and that an investigation is underway while tensions with the United Kingdom grow. The Iranian Foreign Office said that the move was entirely in line with international maritime regulations, unlike the UK's decision to take an Iranian vessel off the coast of Gibraltar, which the Foreign Minister Mohammed Javad Zarif called piracy. He added that the UK must end its role as an accomplice in the United States' economic terrorism against Iran. The British government is expected to announce its next steps in a speech to Parliament on Monday. The United Nations Verification Mission in Colombia has expressed concern over the continuing murders of former FARC combatants, as 127 people have been killed despite the signing of the 2016 peace agreements. The mission's head, Carlos Ruiz Massieu, raised the issue after the mission's visit last week.
The Council was able to observe on the ground the assessment of the peace process is mixed. While efforts by the government to advance the reintegration of former FARC-EP members have begun showing important concrete results, security in conflict-affected areas remain of grave concern. It is also important to highlight that, despite some recent examples to the contrary, the great majority of former FARC-EP members, as well as the leadership of the FARC party, remain strongly committed to the peace process.
Protests against the Puerto Rican governor, Ricardo Rosselló, are continuing despite the rain as demonstrators demand his resignation after leaked social media messages revealed his racist and misogynistic messages. Trade unions and civil society organizations joined the protests on Friday, and police have also demanded his exit for their own safety. The Bar Association of Puerto Rico has said that there is enough support in the island's legislature to force the exit of the governor. At least 14 people have been injured by police repression of the demonstrations so far. Demonstrators on the streets rejoiced when the governor's press secretary, Denise Perez, resigned last night as the scandal surrounding Rosselló continues to grow. And protesters have also moved to take the waters around the island after already taking the streets. Demonstrators have gathered in kayaks to express their wish to see the governor resign. After the break, we'll be joined by Luis Varese, a former combatant in the People's Sandinista Army. Don't go away. Welcome back. Thousands of people celebrated the 40th anniversary of the Sandinista Popular Revolution in Nicaragua on Friday. The event was attended by organized Sandinista bases from all across the country who caravanned to the capital for the commemoration. Nicaraguans were not only marking the revolution, this year is of particular significance as the country defeated the latest attempt at foreign intervention in 2018. So to mark one of the most important revolutionary victories in Latin America, we're joined by Luis Varese, a former combatant in the Sandinista Popular Army. Hello, Luis. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks to you. I am very pleased to be here in the only real voice of the Americas.
So let's jump right into it. Why did you decide to join the Sandinista Army?
I was a journalist. I was contacted by the Frente Sandinista to go to to join the army as a war correspondent, and then one thing takes the other one, and I become a combatant, a soldier, and then an officer.
So
Yes.
it's 40 years later. What was life like as a combatant?
In the South Front, the objective of the South Front, called Benjamin Celedón, the objective was to keep the forces of the National Guard from Somoza, to keep them based there, trying to stop our entry to the country, inside the country. And so it was a day-by-day fighting. We start at 5:30 in the morning, really, and we end at night. So every day we were fighting with a lot of companions have been killed, but it was a very strong way of the fight. Yes, very different of the usual guerrilla.
Yeah. Do you think the Sandinistas' goal was successfully achieved? And what happens next?
At the beginning, of course, it was a real popular revolution against the dictatorship. Was one of the more awful dictatorships in Latin America, the Somoza family. And at the beginning, the redistribution of the properties of the Somoza family, and it was starting very well. But in few months later, or just let's say 1 year later, the United States organized the Contras and start what they call low-intensity war. But it is not the low-intensive war, it's very hard. And after the first 4 or 5 years, they block the same policy that they have now with Venezuela or with Cuba from 60 years, unsuccessfully. And the war was sustained and continued by the United States, and they spent more or less $1 million per month, $1 million per month to sustain these contras. So at the end of the 10 years, the Sandinistas called 2 times for elections, in 1984 and then 1990. The second time, we lose the elections because the rumor, not the rumor, the threat was, if you win the elections, we will continue the war. So the people were scared. You vote with a gun in your head. No? So that was the reason that the electoral defeat in 1990. No? But the goals were reached mostly.
Yeah.
No?
So last year, there was this defeat of a foiled coup attempt in Nicaragua. Who do you think was behind it, and what do you think was the objective behind it?
Yeah, the objective is very clear. We have a constitutional government, democratic elected government. The United States is in the middle of a big offensive against all the popular democracies in Latin America. They had success in Ecuador, they have been successful also in Argentina with different ways, and in Brazil, of course. And in Nicaragua, they start a coup d'etat, very, very violent and with a lot of investment to build this violence.
Yeah.
Who is behind? The extreme right in Nicaragua, and of course the hawks in the Congress of the United States, the CIA, without doubt. No, this is, and you can look for the very offensive phrases and statement of Mr. Bolton or Mr. Elliot Abrams, who are basically delinquents, no, threatened the Sandinista government. The constitutional government of Nicaragua is not the Sandinista government, it's the constitutional government. That coup d'etat was defeated with the law in the hand, strengthening the state of law, strengthening the law in the constitution, with the constitution in the hand and the people in the streets. It was very violent, but in less than 1 year, this coup d'etat was defeated, and we have to take this victory not only for the constitutional government of Nicaragua, but we have to take this victory as a very important triumph for the state of law, el Estado de Derecho, the state of law, and for all Latin America, for the United States themselves, and for all including all the world, because any defeat of the fascism is a triumph for democracy and for the respect of human rights. No? So it's an extraordinary victory.
Do you think that Nicaragua can rest easy, or do you think that they will always have to be prepared for something like this recurring in the future?
The day before yesterday, the president, Daniel Ortega, who is the real leader and the real strategist of the revolution since more than 40 years ago, he announced that the elections will be in 2021,
yes,
as it was programmed, as the Constitution says.
Yes.
That means that we will have 2 years of a situation of rebuild what they destroyed. Very important impact of this coup d'etat was they destroy 2 pillars of the economy. One is the transport of products, no, because they block the roads. And the other one is the tourism. No, there is no, and this is a very strong impact. They have to rebuild this economy. So in these 2 years that we have in front, we will, I mean we, because I feel very close to the Sandinista government, of course, but we will have the time to rebuild, and we will win the next elections. No?
So my final question to you, the U.S. continues to impose sanctions on countries that do not fall in line with its imperialism, including countries like Nicaragua, we see with Cuba, we see with Venezuela. How do you feel about that intervention?
The very, very extremely worrying thing is that the United States are breaking all the construction of the state of law that we had since the end of the Second World War. Human rights statement, and they are distracting. And the other very, very dangerous thing is that the European Union and some countries in Latin America are reinforcing and strengthening this very dangerous route. Huh? And if we don't have clear rules, if we do not respect the decision of the United Nations, if we do not respect multilateralism, we are in the very fine line, a red line. No, we are walking in a red line between war and peace and war. No? And we can see that. Thanks God and thanks there are other human beings, intelligence and smarts and peaceful people like the president of China, Russia, South Africa, Iran, who call, let's be quiet on this because it's a very dangerous situation. Venezuela, Nicaragua, Cuba, they have been under an extreme and illegal pressure of the United States. Now the policy of Mr. Trump is like a pirate. He is like a pirate, exactly like a pirate, and like a gangster. And his group around him is a gang. People like Bolton, people like Pompeo, people like Elliot Abrams, and all of them supported by, I don't know exactly whom, but it's not only the army of the United States, no. There is some very bad and demoniac spirit around them, and they are putting in danger our country. But now we are, the mature, very mature response of Maduro and the very mature response of Daniel Ortega and the very mature response of Evo Morales and of course of the president and the people of Cuba, we can be optimistic about this next few years.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Varese, for joining us and providing your insight on the Sandinista Revolution.
My pleasure, and thanks to you, thanks to Telesur.
Still to come, 17 people have been killed by security forces' repression of self-determination protests in Ethiopia. Stay with us. Thank you. Welcome back. Guyana's President David Granger has said he has been acting in good faith to comply with the Caribbean Court of Justice ruling, meaning elections must be held within 3 months. The CCJ upheld a motion of no confidence in the government on July 18th, which had been passed in December 2018, but was then appealed. The ruling also means that a new chairman must be selected for Guyana's Election Commission.
I would like to see the opposition sitting down with the government side and hammering out the list. This is what the CCJ asked us to do. And this is what I've been trying to do since the 12th of July. It is my firm conviction that the orders, the consequential orders passed by the CCJ could result in an outcome which would benefit the Guyanese people as a whole by having clean elections in as short a time as possible. I believe it's a good solution, and I'm working to implement that decision.
The Trinidad-based Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARPHA, is warning the region to enhance its disease surveillance at ports of entry and health institutions. This follows the World Health Organization's Ebola warning. This week, the WHO declared the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo a public health emergency of international concern. CARPHA said no country should close its borders or place any restriction on travel and trade, but said national authorities should work with airlines, passenger ships, and other transport and tourism industries, adding that screening at ports of entry outside of Africa are not necessary. And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Doris Polo. Thank you for watching.